In the hymn, It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, the author does not necessarily describe the manger where Jesus was born, but instead his hopes for the Christ child's love in the world. While we are used to hearing the story as Jesus being born into a stable, we're learning now that Jesus was born instead in a home, most likely of a relative. The line so often translated saying there was no room for them in the inn refers to the guest quarters of a house in Judea at the turn of the millennia. See, homes at that time made room for the animals indoors, and the guest room was often quiet and set off to the side. But with the crowding, it seems Mary was given the center part of the room, the center part of the house. We know this because the manger would have been located there, where the animals might eat, right in the middle of the home, at the center of the season. We all have been working to bring Christ to the center of the season, trying to get those last-minute things right, hoping that we got all those details complete for our celebrations, hoping we put the guest in the place of importance. However, God rarely demands the place of importance to emerge into our lives. Edmund Sears was a well-educated clergyman. He went to Harvard Divinity School, but that didn't make him demand that big pulpit in the large city. He instead enjoyed serving the rural western Massachusetts churches, and in small churches he had time to do his writing. Off the beaten path, Edmund Sears would watch as fledgling nation that he was a part of would try to work and emerge with ideals as big as the dreams of its people. It was off the beaten path he saw the patterns of division emerge, neighbor calling out neighbor, economics driving morality, and a peculiar institution of slavery creating divisions of class and race too big to overcome. It was as he watched this pain come upon this nation that Sears wrote, "It came upon a midnight clear." Off the beaten path, one man hoped the people would listen to the message of Christmas. I'm going to share the third stanza, which few sing and isn't even in our United Methodist hymn book. But with the woes of sin and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angel strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong. And man at war with man hears not the love song, which they bring. Oh, hush the noise, ye men of strife, and hear the angels sing. From off the beaten path, Sears calls to the people of power that another way is possible, just as the Christmas story does. It sounds like something that would be useful in our day. And this is why I love the Christmas story. It is good for any age in history. It is timeless because it is not the wise or powerful that have all the answers, but a God-birthed child laid in the animal-eating trough in the middle of a peasant's home. The unlikely things change our world, and God shows up where we least expect it. Take, for example, the life of Joseph Moore. His whole life has been described as kind of a Christmas story. Born just before Christmas to a single mom with an absent father, he wandered the streets of the city, while his mom worked odd jobs to provide a rundown home for them. Noticed by the pastor in town, he helped him gain an education. Probably because of this one positive adult relationship with a pastor, this boy sought to enter the ministry. However, without much skill or training, this young man moved from one temporary assignment in one church to another. Finally, the pastor of a little church invited him to lead a Christmas service, only to realize that he had no time to prepare, there was no choir, and this too, the organ was broken. The pastor hoped to make Joseph Moore his fall guy for a poorly planned Christmas service. It is off the beaten path that God does something, and Joseph Moore asked a friend to set a poem he had written to music. They sang the song together for the Christmas service. Joseph was, of course, dismissed from that church, but the song had struck a chord. Joseph would land at a little church in the mountains that would love him, where he would help the poor orphan children attend school. He stayed there at that church until he died at the age of 56. We would not know Joseph Moore's story except that song he and his friends sang. Well, you've sung it before. Well, most likely. It was Silent Night, Holy Night. A song sung on Christmas the world over. It was written off the beaten path 200 years ago, in the last minute at a church that wasn't supposed to have a good service. at a church that was acting its worst, letting a poor, struggling man who had a call from God take the fall for poor planning. You see, what I hope for on Christmas Eve, what I hope for all of us as we leave here, is that we remember and that our God will wait for the perfect place to bring love. And it's not always the perfect place like we think of it. It's an imperfect place. It's a place that's happening right before our eyes, under our noses, and off the beaten path. The story of Christ may be fun, but the truth is that the story is happening in Billings, in Montana, in Israel, in Mexico, in China, in Russia, around the world. It is a story of love, and it is our opportunity to make space in the center of our home for love to be born.